If you want to know how I'm always lean and why it's the food and not exercise, so on this channel, if you want to lose weight following a healthy lifestyle, so that is not just starving to lose weight. If you want to eat, so eat to lose weight, then it's the foods that I recommend. And for newer viewers, I make the same video sort of every so often, and that's reinforcing the message that if you want to be lean, so lose weight and stay lean and healthy for your height and your build, naturally how heavily or light built you are, then it's based on foods like white rice, so starches, and foods like bananas, so fruit. So this is the same message that I keep repeating. The first video I put out now was in September of 2024. So it's been, coming up to 1.5 years at the time making this video, and then for years and years before that, before I started posting these videos to help people to make the world a better place, at least individually for people who find these videos who want to get healthy. And I know this because, and I'm going to show you what you can use so that you know that it's not the exercise, it's the food. Okay, so I would say for most people, you should never actually weigh yourself. Okay, so I don't think it's part of a healthy routine to go on the scales and always weigh yourself. I think a very good way to know intuitively is just to look in the mirror. So just to look in the mirror and you'll know if you're happy or not, or it'll be obvious or not that you're overweight. Okay, so I think that's a better way, a healthier way to do it, rather than just looking at scales and always worrying about that. So I keep a record of all the training I do, so that way I know for, historically I have a training log so that I know how I'm doing, and that's what I recommend people having. And that means that I have a record, therefore, of my weight versus how much exercise I'm doing. So I have here, I've got a bike computer. Okay, so I've got a Garmin, but other brands are available. And then I pair that with, so you can see there, I pair that with a power meter. So in there, so where it says 4I, so that's a precision, 4I. So there, so this is a left-hand crank power meter. So that records all my data. So that produces data, and then my Garmin stores that. And then I store that data on TrainingPeaks. So I have a paid version of TrainingPeaks, and that's got years worth of data. And I'm going to show you now what I've done for my training for the last 3 months. And since around the end of October, I've hardly done any training. I always get the same thing because people see me in training in cycling kit and on a bike. People always jump to assume that I ride like a professional rider, like I do 30 hours a week or more, when that's not the case. It's never the case. So, if you ever see me, seeing this video, hello, I don't do, he could be doing more miles than me. Okay, so it's about the food. So if you get the food wrong, it doesn't matter how much exercise you do, you'll always be worrying about your weight. And what I mean by that is fat. Okay, so it's about fat, and then those foods that affect your hormones. So there's different things, that are affecting the reason why you might be heavier than you want to be. So obviously, firstly, the amount of fat you eat. because obviously over and over again, I say the fat you eat is the fat you wear. So just, if you want to lose fat or not gain fat, stop eating it. Okay, that should be obvious. And now that it is, that I've said it, it's obvious. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. So stop adding fat if you want to lose the fat that you have already. So obviously, it's, again, the more fat you eat in your diet, therefore, either the slower the weight loss, or, so it goes from maybe if you had 10 or 20 grams a day, your weight loss would be coming down, and then maybe if you're eating 40 or 50 grams a day, your weight's about the same or slightly starting to increase. And then when you get into 100 grams a day or more, you're going to increase your weight. Okay, so the less fat you have to a certain point that's healthy, so just naturally getting fat from starches and fruit, your weight's going to come down, and then eventually you'll find a set point. Okay, a set point where your just weight stays the same forever, depending on how much exercise but the food. So the more you eat like cookies and fatty pizza and burgers, vegan burgers, vegan pizza, vegan ice cream, the more fat you add to your diet, yes, that's going to increase your weight, but then it also affects how anabolic you are as well. Maybe, you know, for men, you know, when they start to accumulate that much fat, they actually will start basically growing, you know, breast tissue, because fat cells actually start producing hormones themselves. And, you know, these things we elicit, the changes that we elicit, are due to the way we interact with our environment the most, and it's through the food. Okay, so exercise is good, but you'll never, I can just hear starlings in the distance. I don't know if the mic can pick it up. Can you hear it? It's nice. It's a nice noise, that, because, you know, there's never much birdsong anymore. Even in my short life, I've noticed the birdsong's decreased. But I'll show you now my training log for the last 3-4 months, and you'll be able to see my training. So how many miles I do, how many kilometers, how many hours, and I'll probably put on the screen, but since end of October, so usually the last almost decade actually now, what I'd do is, I'd train and then I'd have a break. So I'd train and race, or I do lots of cycling through spring, summer, autumn, and then I'd have a break at the end of autumn for maybe, it depends, a few weeks. And in that period I'd actually eat fatty foods, and guess what, my weight would go up. And I make the same videos, but if people miss them and they just start watching my videos, you might miss old ones. So and then that would be my routine. So then I'd eat fatty foods for a few weeks, and that would add weight, and I'd gain weight. And I'm not exercising during that period, but it doesn't matter, I would still gain weight regardless. And then I would stop eating fatty foods, go back to just eating white rice, potatoes, nice starches and fruit, and then my weight would drop, and then my set point would go back to where it was for doing lots of training. Okay, riding my bike. And this year has been different. So I've been writing a book, so that's taken up all my time, plus more. So I'd spend every available hour writing this book, and have done now for months, putting into a format where people might not necessarily need to watch every video. They can just go to the book and look and find out what they need to know in order to be healthy. And then I'm thinking about paperback and ebook version, because I have seen a comment, someone said that they wanted to share a video, but it was with someone who didn't actually have the internet, so that would be good if I could get a paperback version. But I'll show you now my training log, so you can see I've been between 69 and 69.4 kilos exactly for about 3 or 4 months, and I'm still just eating generally the same food. So just the rotation through of just white rice and fruit and potatoes and starches and fruit, just rotating through them. Melons and bananas and all of these different varieties, all these choices of starches and fruit and sauces, and enjoying that. And yeah, my set point is higher than it would be if I was doing lots of riding, but that would be the same for everyone. So if you're eating the right foods plus riding, yes, your weight's going to come down. But if you're still eating lots of burgers and pizza, and I say the same thing, okay, the amount of fat you eat, the more fat you eat, the more fat you wear. So most people I see exercising, so riding their bikes, actually, yes, some people might look like me, but that's quite often because they just starve themselves to look like me, or they just are overweight. So most people who are cycling are actually overweight, and it's because of the food. Okay, so it always comes back to the food. So during the racing season, or if I was doing lots of training, I'd be more like 65 kilos. So my weight fluctuation from the highest to lowest is only ever going to be 4 or 5, maybe 10% of my overall weight. 10 to 12% of my overall weight is going to fluctuate from year to year. So anyway, I'll show you my training now, and then you can decide for yourself. If you think that it's all about exercise, then go ahead, do hundreds of thousands of hours, but you'll never enjoy it. Okay, so that's the thing. You'll never enjoy, I recommend cycling because there's so many benefits to it that other exercise doesn't have. You won't enjoy going out and riding your bike because all you'll be thinking about is, well, I need to do this to lose weight. I have to torture myself to lose weight, when all I could do is enjoy eating the foods that allow your set point to naturally come down and be lean. So you don't need to be at like 4 or 5 or 6% body fat. I'm not talking about 1% body fat. When I say lean, I'm just a healthy, lean body fat. So I still have definition, of my muscles, but my veins aren't bulging out, and I'm not at 2 or 3% body fat. For 69 kilos for 5'11", that's totally fine. Okay. So there we go. Hope that puts your mind at ease if you've ever thought, is it the food or is it the exercise? It's the food. Exercise just helps. Here is my data. So this is Strava, and I'm going to show you my TrainingPeaks. So this is TrainingPeaks, and we'll show you my Strava. So since the 20th of October 2025, this is how much I've done each week. So this will show you in kilometers. So starting here, as you can see, 20th of October to 26th of October 2025. And then flicking through every week. So that's November, December, January. Didn't do anything those 2 weeks. And then up until this week. So it's now the 1st of February today. So in that time, since 20th of October 2025 to the 1st of February 2026, that is an average of 1 hour and 35 minutes a week. So I've averaged just over an hour and a half a week since week beginning. If you want to say week begins on a Monday, usually you'd probably say week begins on a Sunday, but just for this video, week beginning Monday, the 20th of October, this is how much I've done. Okay. So 27.5 hours, 791 kilometers. And the elevation gain, that's always wrong. GPS is always off with that. It's usually actually a bit more, so probably more like 12,000 meters. But the point is, in this time that I've done this amount of exercise through cycling, My weight has fluctuated around 69 to 69.4 kilos, 5'11", eating to feel full every day, eating the same thing. So rice, fruit. I love rice, had some pasta, and I explained at this point here, so here, end of October, I was obviously now in this period, November, December, January, I'd been deciding, I'd been writing this book and then spending all my time doing that. And now that I'm sort of getting towards the end of that, hopefully, my training's already come up a little bit. But in this period here, at the end of October, as I said, I always would eat more fatty foods in order to gain a bit of weight, so that when I'm training through this period here, November, December, January, February, especially when it's cold in the Northern Hemisphere, you're training through the cold, you're going to burn through a lot of fat during this period if you're doing, well, more than 1.5 hours a week on average. If you're doing at least 10 hours, I always recommend at least 6 hours. So even if you're doing at least 6 hours a week, which is, like 3 times more than I've done, you're going to burn through more fat when you're eating a low-fat diet. So the fat you eat is the fat you wear. So obviously if you're eating low-fat, you don't have lots of fat on you. So I always recommend adding a bit more fat. If you are going to train, do lots of exercise, or do exercise through the winter, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere like I am, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that so much if you lived in the tropics all year and you don't have that fluctuation in temperature. Because in the colder climes, colder temperatures, you're going to burn through fat quicker because we're warm-blooded, so we have to maintain optimum heat temperature around 37 degrees Celsius. So obviously you need to burn more chemical energy to maintain heat. Whereas if it's already warm, it's already nice and warm, which is not in the UK, then you don't necessarily need to burn through as much heat to regulate your body temperature compared to the background temperature of the environment. And people, they get fooled into thinking that they get lean in the summer just because the heat. Well, it's not. It's just you're more motivated in the summer to exercise and move your body more, and then you just don't realize it. That's what causes the weight loss. Whereas in the winter, you maybe just you don't want to move your body as much because it's cold and nasty. So it's the food, then exercise, not exercise and then food. So if you get the food wrong and you continue to eat fatty foods, so you can eat fatty foods for a few weeks if you were already lean, like I always am. But as you can see from me not exercising now, hardly anything, for 16 weeks, 1.5 hours a week on average exercise for 16 weeks. And my set point has stayed around 69 kilos to 69.4 kilos, 69 to 69.5 kilos, 5'11". So yeah, you'll find your weight will drop down with the low fat, starches and fruit, with cycling over months and years, and then you'll eventually find a natural set point. So hope you enjoy the video, and like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.